Results continue to trickle into the National Tallying Center at the Bomas of Kenya. We continue to look and interrogate this issue of the Forms 34A and also just the general collation of the results. Joining me now in studio is Collins Owuor, and he is with the African Observation Elections Group. Thank you for coming in. This is not your first election that you have observed. What have you seen so far, at least from how the results have been relayed?
Basically, first and foremost, I must thank citizens, Kenyan citizens, for having taken the opportunity to, of course, participate in this democratic process. And my observation, and in terms of the reports that we've been able to see, one of the things is that each and everyone had an opportunity to get out there very early in the morning and also queue, and they were able to vote. Apart from a few incidences here and there, I must say that at least a good number of people got an opportunity to go and vote.
Right. So
that is something that we must appreciate and acknowledge. And of course, there is the process of opening the polling stations. There is the process of ensuring that the ballot boxes are sealed, and the people who are able to take note in terms of that. And of course, we have been able to see the party agents coming into the polling station and other observers. There are quite a number of observers from different areas. So far, as far as the process of the voter process was concerned, I must say that quite a lot was done well, despite the fact that there are few people, in one way or another, who might have not had an opportunity to vote because either their thumbs could not be recognized by the KIMS, that is one, or their names were actually missing from the register. However, we were able to note that in some incidences, the returning officers were able to give them an opportunity maybe to go to the central tallying station so that they could verify on their own. I also witnessed a situation where an ID, your ID could be taken and put on the KIMS. Then once your picture appeared there, then definitely you'll be able to get a ballot paper and go and vote.
Right. Yeah. Now there's been some concerns because even though the voting process for the most part went well, now it's the whole relaying of the results, and this whole issue of the Forms 34A has come up because in the transmission of a lot of those results, the forms were not scanned or brought at least together with the electronic results. What do you make of such a case now?
Well, like I say, in some of the instances where we were there, like what we do is that we must at least ensure that we are able to close in a station. And for us to close in a station, it means that the vote counting has to be done properly, the agents have to sign it, and once they've been able to sign, then it can be scanned. So there are those instances. Then there are those instances where we could also see there were challenges in terms of the machine itself not retaining the battery, and that would mean it was supposed to be to be charged so that it could open that way. Right. However, my thinking is that when some of these things are able to happen, then there is need for some notification or clarification in terms of the process, how it is. And I remember on one occasion when the machine was not functioning properly, and I can cite this in Kondele, Kisumu. In Kondele, Kisumu specifically, there was a polling station that the KIMS was not able to open nicely. The reason was the password that was there was actually wrong. It was meant for another polling station. But there was a way that the IEBC officials were able to talk with the agents. And once they've talked to the agents, then they could get an amicable solution in terms of how that is sorted. And remember, each and every station had at least a technician from the Independent Boundaries and Commission. And out of that, of course, the voting process started late, but then it continued. So there was this kind of a conversation between both the IEBC, the party agents, and of course the entire process had to move on.
So you're saying that the IEBC should have been a bit more forthcoming with that kind of information in terms of technical hitches without, say, the NASA top brass coming and complaining about there not being the Forms 34A?
Basically, complaints were there. That is something that I have to say. It was not only NASA that was complaining, but the general public also at some point was complaining, especially when you have lined throughout and you're not able to vote. But what I liked about the citizenry, and this is something that I seen, is the orderly and the soberness in terms of how they were conducting the process. So I don't remember an incident where somebody was chased away. However, I remember in one particular polling station in Lyons High School, where there quite a little confusion because that was kind of the central polling station of the constituency. And you could find that there are people who are being sent in that place so that they can go and verify with the PO, the presiding officer, to really verify whether they are there or not. And I remember at some point, there are other people who also came who were complaining from different particular parties, right. so that they could address this issue amicably. Well, I left it before it was handled, but I do believe that in one way or another, then they might have had an opportunity to vote. But one thing that I must say is that despite all the challenges that were happening, I must say that in a way, IEBC has conducted itself in a good way. I've observed the election previously and also now. So looking at quite a lot of expectations that Kenya are in, and looking at quite a number of things that are happening, it is therefore important also to appreciate, in a way, that the Independent and Boundaries Commission must have done something that was good. Yeah. And throughout, if you look, even if you observe throughout, you might not see that there were real commotions out there. Because we also have people from Mombasa, we also have people from Northeastern who are able to report. And one of the things that we have planned to do is that we are compiling a report. Because again, in any process has its own challenges. And I do believe, as a responsible citizen of this country, is that I have an opportunity that if something is not happening right, then we also have the courts that we can go and seek redress. So one of the things that I think is very key that we need to do is also to appreciate the fact that Kenya is a big nation and Kenya is great and all of us belong to Kenya and there's nowhere that we can go. But as responsible leaders and responsible citizens, we also need to have a conversation. And that is what the Constitution provides for. That can we have a conversation that we can understand each other, so that when all is said and done, that we can celebrate as patriotic citizens of this country by correcting things, because we are in a learning process. If you look at 2013, there are quite a lot of achievements that we are able to see in terms of technology and also in terms of how the whole, and even the polling streams. There are 700 voters lining, unlike the other time where you could see quite a number of people.
So they try to at least streamline the process with these new interventions.
Yes.
And you mentioned that the IEBC had done a good job generally in terms of conducting the elections, but what about response? Because even though they're getting the Forms 34A brought to the National Tallying Center, that was not part of the plan initially.
Yeah.
What do you make of that response to say, okay, because there was an issue of the scanning of those forms, let's have them come physically to the National Tallying Center. Is that acceptable in terms of a response?
What I think is very critical and what is very key is that moving forward, IEBC must have a very elaborate or comprehensive feedback mechanism in terms of how to report. And that is something that we need to have a conversation over with different stakeholders to see how best this can happen nicely. Because then, if we don't have a very comprehensive feedback in terms of how information is generated and disseminated, then definitely there will be a problem. As we speak now, the official opposition has already raised concerns, which are very genuine. And if there is a due process that can be followed nicely, then you see this is going to help in terms of ensuring that in future, moving forward, then we will be able to have very credible and free and fair elections. So that is something that we cannot wish away. And again, this is a learning point for all of us as stakeholders who are also part of this process, that how best do we ensure that we are able to support the process? By one, performing our civic duty, two, ensuring that citizens are able also to be organized in such a way that if there are issues that are not happening rightly, then let's get out as a family and say we must address these issues. And of course, we have time frames. IEBC has a time frame in terms of how they need to give even their results. And we as citizens, of course, we have a lot of expectation, because after every 5 years, we have a social contract with our leaders and we need to see things moving. So when there's quite a lot of suspicion here and there, then in one way or another, it brings a challenge. But now me, as a member of the civil society organization, I am also supposed to be responsible enough to see how do then I communicate to the people who I work with. Because again, there are people, like we've been being called here and there are people who really want a lot of information from us. So what is this correct information that I must lay outside there? That is number one. Remember, we are also managing the expectations of the citizenry. And the citizens, in one way or another, have made their choice. And I've just been going through some of the statements that are being given by different observers. Many people are congratulating the process. But again, they have recommendations, like IGAD are congratulating the process, but they have recommendations in terms of how things are supposed to be done to promote free and fair election and also credible. Because the most important thing here is that how do we ensure that moving forward, we are not in such a kind of a situation where we are either suspicious or things are failing and things are not happening well. Because as a Kenyan, of course, once I've done something, I need to see results out of it.
All right, great points there. Thank you so much, Collins Owuor, for coming in and continuing on with your work as we wait for these results to come in and the final call of who has actually won from the presidential all the way to the member of county assembly. We're taking